Hi, and welcome to my February and March TBR video. Now there are two things that are kind of weird with this video. Number one, it is already March, why am I talking about my February TBR? And number two, I normally do my TBR along with my physical TBR challenge, so they're usually in the same video. But I'm doing something a little different in 2025 in which I have set monthly TBRs based off of these categories that I'm going to talk about in a second. And so I wanted to make sure that I am talking about the categories before I get to my bi-monthly wrap-ups. Now I've been traveling for most of winter at this point, and so I didn't get to make a February TBR video, whether it's for the physical TBR challenge or the TBR books that I wanted to read for these categories, and so I thought I would combine it with this video talking about my March TBR. I did make another video just for my physical TBR challenge because I did acquire quite a lot of books in my winter travels, so this is why the videos are a little different today. Going forward though, I will be making videos talking about the categories, looking into the next month, as well as the monthly update of how my physical TBR challenge is doing. I'm talking also about two different TBRs right here. When I say my physical TBR or my personal TBR, I'm talking about the books behind me. I'm trying to read more of the books that I own, but when I'm talking about my monthly TBRs, I'm talking about the books that I want to be read. TBR means to be read. So two different TBRs going. Usually they go together. I'm trying really hard to make sure that the books that I'm planning to read each month are on the shelves behind me, but sometimes you'll see because of the categories, I'm going to be reading books from my library and online and the new books that I buy. So I'm going to give you the 5 categories that I've been choosing my monthly TBRs for, and we're going to do both February and March. And once again, I got this kind of concept from a book talker. I'm gonna have to go into the dredges of my saved videos to see if I can find her, because she really just kind of radicalized the way that I'm going to do my monthly TBR videos. I'm loving it so far, and I need to make sure that I can give her credit. But the first of these 5 categories is identity recognition. These are going to be our heritage months and also identity recognition days. For February, it was Black History Month, and it was also the Chinese Lunar New Year. My city is doing a really cool thing called the Big Read, in which they want everyone to read the same books so that as a community we can talk about it. And the book that they chose is Homegoing, and so they have us all starting to read it at the beginning of March. So I did not read it in February, but I intend to read it in March, so that kind of rolled over a little bit. January's Identity Recognition Day, the only thing I could find was MLK Day, and so I ended up reading it in February. I read The Three Mothers, so it kind of reached for both, but I also just wanted to read fun books by Black authors, and so I read I Got Abducted by Aliens and Now I'm Trapped in a Rom-Com by Kimberly Lumming. I absolutely adore her series, and then I also really wanted to get to the Book of Azrael, especially because this author, I'm going to go to an event that she's going to in a few months, so I really wanted to get to it and I just didn't have time. For Lunar New Year, I did read The Teller of Small Fortunes and I absolutely loved it. Now for March, there are 2 identity recognition days. One of them is Women's History Month, and for that I am picking up A Well-Behaved Woman. This centers around the life of Alva Vanderbilt. She was a really big part of women's suffrage movement in the Golden Era. I've been to Newport, Rhode Island a few times, and I absolutely love touring grand houses, staying with castles wherever I go, and so I've always been very interested in the Vanderbilt history and kind of what kind of contributed to the Golden Age. And as somebody who doesn't read a ton of nonfiction, I'm actually really excited for this one. Now secondly, on March 31st, it is Transgender Visibility Day, and the Trans Rights Readathon is going from March 21st to March 31st to lead up to the day. And in an attempt to participate in the readathon as much as I can, I've picked out a bunch of trans books that I've been wanting to get to. Last year I read 2 nonfiction books that were just very opposite ends of the spectrum, so this year I decided to do a lot of fiction and fantasy books. I will most likely get to Mammoths at the Gates because I've been reading this series. It is number 3 and I'm absolutely loving it so far, and that is a non-binary rep as the main protagonist. But otherwise, I had the Sunbury Trials, The Wicked Bargain, The Borrow a Boyfriend Club, Otherworldly, and A Bone in His Teeth to pick from. After I made the list, I kind of realized that it was a lot of trans mask representation, and so if I get to all these, I think next year I'm going to really focus on trans femme representation. The second category is my World Map Challenge, in which I'm trying to read books by authors that are not from the US or from the UK. I looked back, and out of the hundreds of books that I've read over the past few years, there's only been maybe 5 countries represented. I don't know why it's so hard to find books that are by authors not from the States. It's just, there's so many States books in my face at all times, and I really want to read more about the world. And so I have this trusty little tin that I got from the Netherlands, in which I wrote down every single country. I cross-checked a lot of lists to make sure that I had every country possible represented, and each month I picked one of these countries, and I really And I think I'm shooting a bit too high maybe to read both a nonfiction and a fiction book from each of these countries. It's already kind of feeling like a lot. So now I'm just going to pick one and maybe get to both, who knows. So I think my new plan is to pick a fiction book, most likely sometimes a fantasy, just because that I know I'm going to enjoy that a lot more than my nonfiction picks, and then watch a bunch of YouTube videos about the country itself if I haven't been to it. So for January, the first country I picked was the Netherlands, and I read both a nonfiction and a fiction book, and I learned quite a lot, but it was a lot for me. And then for February, I did pick Ireland, and initially I had a long list of books that I wanted to get to. I wanted to read Dracula and Carmilla and The Picture of Dorian Gray and all these other books that are just like classic Irish authors, but I realized that I was very quickly overwhelmed, especially when I added in a bunch of nonfiction books that I had on my radar, and then a bunch of like fantasy books today that are inspired by Irish mythology. It was just, I already felt too much. But I did end up reading Carmilla, which is like the OG vampire book that predates Dracula, even though I've read Dracula before and I've loved it. It's been a while though, but I did read Carmilla. It was quite short. It was a little weird, and I realized it was weird because it was written by a man and it's like a very sapphic vampire kind of story. It was way more gay than I was anticipating, which was fun, honestly. But yeah, it just felt kind of weird. And then I also checked out the Libby audio version of The Children of Gods and Fighting Men because that's been on my TBR, and I know it's heavily inspired by Irish mythology, and so I'm really hoping, I didn't get to it in February, but I'm hoping to get to it in March. Now, I have been to both those countries, so I didn't feel the need to watch a ton of YouTube videos about them because I've done it in the past. I mean, I've been there, I've experienced a lot of the things, so I felt okay. But for March, I ended up picking Grenada, and I won't lie, I'm really disappointed in myself. I had no idea where in the world this was. So I immediately went to Google and I learned just the basic facts, found it on a map, and then I watched a ton of YouTube videos. I watched some historical videos. I watched some like travel blogger videos going today. I just kind of got like a baseline knowledge of Grenada and, you know, just learned the basic facts because I'm very sad to say that I knew literally nothing. So then I was trying to do research into trying to find authors, and there were a few that came up, but I did end up choosing Under the Silk Cotton Tree by Jean Buffon. It was highly recommended in a lot of articles like talking about Grenadian rep, and so I couldn't find it literally anywhere. I couldn't find it on Libby, I couldn't find it at any of my libraries, so I did end up ordering a used book online, and that should be arriving like mid to late March, so I'm really hoping I'm able to get to it in this month. Now, those first two categories are very heavily reliant on picking up books that are making me read more diversely and more about people that are not looking like me, so that I, you know, at least get some kind of representation throughout my months. But these next three categories are heavily reliant on the physical TBR behind me, thank goodness. So category number 3 is picking one of my 25 and 25, aka my priority TBR list. Of those 25, I'm pretty sure I own like 21 or 22 of the books, so they are usually on the shelves behind me, but because I was traveling all winter, I tried to pick the books that I don't have my physical TBR so I can take advantage of that. So in January, I read the very first Agatha Christie book. That's getting me started on my Hercule Poirot journey and reading all of Agatha Christie's books. That's gonna be like a year-long project, like multi-years. And then for February, I read The Wrath of the Dawn by Renee Adia. I do have some of her other books, but I've never read this like OG one of hers, so I wanted to read that while I got it on my Kindle. Now, originally for January, I did start The King of Elfland's Daughter. This is a fantasy that predates The Lord of the Rings, and I found it in Shakespeare & Co. in Paris, and I was really excited for it, and I was really hoping that I would be able to finish it before going on my travels, but I won't lie, I got a little bit of the way in, and I hated it. I hated it so much. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give myself a break and I'm gonna come back to it. So I'm picking this up again in March, and I'm really hoping that I've already read a little bit more yesterday, and I'm really hoping that I can get back into it and hopefully finish it. It's, you know what, I really shouldn't be surprised at how freaking sexist it is, but it's a little painful to go through. But it's a beautiful book and it's a souvenir, so I refuse to get rid of it, so I really want to finish it. But in addition to that, I think this is the month that I finally read Legendborn. The third book literally comes out, I think today or yesterday, when I'm filming this, and so I think it is time for me to read all 3 of the books that are out. I have been putting it off for so long because I'm scared. I know it's good, I know the hype is real, and I'm really scared. I do love Arthurian legends, but I need to read these, so I think I'm also going to get to these this month. So hopefully I can check off 2 in my 25 and 25. That'd be awesome. Because clearly at the rate of 1 per month, I'm not going to get to all 25, so I need to start stepping it up. category number 4 is to continue a series. This is because I am currently in the middle of so many series and I really want to finish them. I want to get them done. I have a whole sheet in my spreadsheet entirely dedicated to series, and I want to cry a little bit every time I open it up because there are so many that I'm currently reading. So in February, I ended up reading the next book in this series that I was talking about earlier. I don't know I think it's called the Singing Hills series. I think that's what it's called. And so I read the third book called Into the Winterlands, and that was my continuation. And obviously for both non-binary rep and a continuous series, I would like to read the fourth one. But also, The Whispering Night is the third and final book in a YA fantasy trilogy that I started. I read the first 2 books in the fall and was just so excited, but the third book wasn't out yet. And the first 2 books I got at Waterstones, and I was like, I need this one to match the rest. And so I couldn't get this book until I went back to London. But now that I went to London, I got the book. I'm back now. I really want to finish this series. It was definitely in my top 3 for books that I read last year, so I am so psyched to finish this. And lastly, the final category is just to read another book off of my physical TBR. This is just to make sure that I'm reading the books that are behind me. Now, obviously in February, I was not here for the entire month, so I didn't get to read anything on my physical TBR, which made me really sad, which means I need to step it up for March. And unfortunately, I think I may be stepping it up a little bit too much because I have way too many books that I want to get to this month. So in addition to all of the other books that I've already talked about, I've already picked up these 4 that I'm really hoping to get to this month. First Time Caller came when it was in the mail. I want to read this immediately. Next is Wings of Starlight. I have been so excited ever since I heard that this book was coming out. I'm a little apprehensive though because I did not like the other book that I read by her, but I think that having Queen Clarion's story is going to just make everything better, and so I need to read this right now. I also picked up not 1 but 2 versions of The Rose Bargain while I was in Europe, and it just sounds like something completely up my alley, so I'm really hoping to get to it this month. Definitely this year, please. And then I've been dying to get to Half a Soul. I bought this while I was in my Winter Travels Part 1 and then had to leave it here so I can go on Winter Travels Part 2. So I have been dying to read this book. And then again, at the same time, because I read that Kimberly Lemming book, I swear I clawed my way out of my alien romance era because of Ruby Dixon. I would put a hard pause on that, but because of this new Kimberly Lemming book, I was staring at the one and only alien romance I have on my shelves unread. So maybe I'll get to this week. There's a book club that I've been kind of wanting to join, but I'm kind of scared to do it. But this month they are reading Daisy Jones and the Six, and the meeting is tomorrow. And so this morning I started the audiobook because I was told that's the way to read it, and I'm already like 40% of the way in. We'll see if I finish it by tomorrow. And then lastly, my cousin is reading Throne of Glass for the first time, and so I'm trying to buddy read it with her. So I'm really hoping I can read this one and the third book this month so I can catch back up to her because I stopped because of my travels. But honestly, it is the lowest on my priority right now. So I am a little bit scared for this month because I've picked up way too many books. Like there's no chance I'm gonna finish all of these. But I have some really bangers in this stack. I know they're in here, I just need to get to them. So we'll see how many of these I can read. I'm also going to start a new thing starting this month in which I'm going to do a reading vlog just for the physical TBR books. I'm really looking forward to that. I think what I'm gonna do though is just pick 1 from each category. Like there's no way I'm gonna get through all of these. So I think just picking 1 for each category for the vlog, and then to hopefully, just get through more of them outside of the vlog. But those are going to be the books that I hope to get through in March. But again, going forward, this is going to be combined with my physical TBR videos. I'm going to start by going through the 5 categories and the books that I've chosen for that month, as well as updating my physical TBR from the previous month. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.